The biggest changes in any industry, they don't always happen with a big announcement. A lot of the time, it happens quietly, behind the scenes. And right now, it looks like the rules for crypto are being rewritten in a way that might have already picked the winners and losers for years to come.
So let's just ask the big question right up front. What if a draft bill, one that's quietly making its way through the US Senate, has essentially created a legal fast lane for a very, very select group of crypto assets? Let's dig into that, because it's a huge deal.
All right, so for years, the biggest story in crypto, at least in the United States, hasn't really been about the tech. It's been about total confusion. We've been stuck in this legal gray area that has kept literally trillions of dollars of institutional money sitting on the sidelines just waiting.
And the core of that problem? It's basically a turf war between two super powerful regulators, the SEC and the CFTC. The SEC says, hey, that crypto is a security. The CFTC says, no, it's a commodity. And with both of them claiming they're in charge, but nobody actually in charge, the real money just stays away.
Look, for the big players, the pension funds, the endowments, this isn't about hype or speculation. It's all about legal certainty. They hate confusion way more than they hate risk. So until the rules of the road are crystal clear, that massive wave of capital, it's going to stay frozen, period.
But that might be exactly what's about to change. There's this new draft bill for market structure making the rounds in the Senate, and its entire reason for existing is to finally draw some clear lines in the sand and put an end to this whole regulatory mess. As former SEC Commissioner Paul Atkins put it, the whole mission here is to bring crypto asset markets out of the legal gray area. The goal is really simple: create clear, predictable rules so the US can become the center of the crypto world.
Okay, now hidden deep inside this draft bill is the part that changes everything. It's this one provision, and in simple terms, here's what it says. If a token is the main asset of an ETF that's listed on a national exchange by January 1st, 2026, it gets a pass. It doesn't have to deal with the same regulatory uncertainty as everyone else. It's essentially a green light from the government.
And here's the kicker. This provision doesn't just create a new rule, it creates a list. By setting this standard, the bill effectively points to a specific group of assets that already meet the criteria, creating what is, for all intents and purposes, a safe list for big money to pour into.
So the billion-dollar question is pretty obvious, right? Who made the cut? Which assets are being given this clear path forward while everyone else is still stuck in limbo?
Here they are: Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, Litecoin, Chainlink, Hedera, and Dogecoin. Just 8 assets that, based on the way this bill is written, are all being put in the same special category, ready for prime-time institutional-grade investment.
Now, it's really tempting to look at a list like this and think, oh, so lawmakers are just picking their favorites. But that's not what's going on here at all. This isn't about choosing winners, it's about recognizing the assets that have already proven they have the best quality and are real players in the market. And that's the key distinction you have to understand. This bill is acknowledging that these specific assets have already survived and passed a series of brutal, real-world tests. The law isn't creating their special status, it's really just catching up to a reality that already exists.
So what does that best quality actually look like? Well, it boils down to 3 main things. First, these things already trade and settle like big, important goods. Think oil or gold. Second, their networks aren't just science projects. They support real, existing cash flows right now. And third, they've built this serious, institutional-grade infrastructure, the derivatives, the custody solutions, that big money absolutely requires before they'll touch anything.
And this recognition, this stamp of approval, well, that's what unlocks everything else. The moment that legal gray area vanishes for these specific assets, a massive domino effect gets set into motion. The entire dynamic just flips on its head. It's no longer a game of surviving the next regulatory lawsuit. The game suddenly becomes about growth, about expansion, and about plugging directly into the traditional financial system.
And you can see that chain reaction pretty clearly. All of a sudden, filing for an ETF isn't a political knife fight anymore. It's just a procedural step. Derivatives markets can expand without looking over their shoulder. And, maybe most importantly, all that conservative capital from retirement funds and university endowments can finally, safely come into the market. And that's the number we're really talking about here. Trillions. Trillions of dollars that have been sitting on the sidelines, waiting for exactly this kind of permission slip from the government before they were allowed to get in the game.
So for those 8 assets on the list, the door is now basically wide open. You know, big players like BlackRock and Fidelity might not have filed ETFs for all of them just yet, but with that regulatory risk gone, it stops being a question of if they will, it's just a question of when. The trigger for a massive flood of new capital is cocked and ready to be pulled.
When you step back and look at it, this draft bill is a lot more than just a set of rules. It's kind of like a treasure map. It's showing everyone exactly where the legally safe ground is for institutional money to go. The regulatory map is being drawn right in front of us, and for the assets marked on that map, the future is starting to look a whole lot different than it did just a few months ago.